Hello there, everybody, and thank you to Rockstar Interviews from Beyond. I'm Nora Yolles Young, and this is Veronica Drake. let's welcome Veronica. She is our channel for our show today, and we have an amazing show today. And one of my favorite rock stars of all time, super talented and pretty misunderstood guy, Chris Cornell. We're going to welcome Chris to the show. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Nora. What's up?
I'm so glad that you're here. Now, you have been a fabulous artist, a musician, an amazing vocalist, as all of us know, composer, humanitarian. Now, that's the part that a lot of people don't know about you. You name it, and you check all of those boxes off. So I just want to get the ball rolling today and welcome you to the show. And I'm appreciative. I'm so appreciative of you agreeing to be on the show. So let's see. I've got a little stuck here. I'm reading my notes. You had the respect of top vocalists in rock and roll. You had, after you passed, Eddie Vedder considered you the best singer that we've got on the planet. That's his quote. Alice Cooper referred to you as the voice. Axl Rose, the singer, just buries me, he says. The guy sings so great. And Ronnie James Dio, who I love. I'm a huge fan of the older Black Sabbath and of Dio. I think Chris Cornell is such a great singer, and those guys from Soundgarden write so well and always write well. I love what he's done with Audio Slave and the things he's done, and I don't know where I lost the quote. But needless to say, you earn the respect of really major legends in the music industry. And so we'll just start with that and continue from there. What does it feel like to have that kind of respect as a musician and as an artist?
So this is Veronica, and Chris is over here. And so I want to clarify, when I channel, I don't lose track of my body. I am simply the interpreter. And so I want to start out by saying something to Chris. I had no clue who Chris was. None. And I'm pretty savvy musically. I run the gamut, and I know Soundgarden. I just never delved into who the members were. So I had no idea about Chris Cornell. And I know him very intimately now, thanks to his very easygoing, forthcoming, honest energy that came through. And so without further ado, I would like to have a dialogue that I will share with you with Chris Cornell. I want to start out by telling you that Chris Cornell is showing up here very casual. He's got a pair of jeans on. He has no shoes on. He's got a white t-shirt on, maybe like an off-white t-shirt, and he's got a guitar with him that's leaning, but he's not touching or strumming the guitar. And he is the word I'm going to use is sheepish. He's very sheepish, very almost shy-like. So he's very honored to be here, and he knows that we will do a good job in keeping things holistic and very loving and very kind to all involved. So that needed to be said. So I'm sorry, Nora, as far as your question, him and being embarrassed.
Wait, let's freestyle. Let's go with it. I am just so thrilled that he knows that, and we love you. We're wanting to bring you to the next step in your connection with your fans, and this, I see this as a co-creative experience that we can all delight in, and there's no need to put anyone down or throw any shade on anyone. This is all about bringing us as humanity here on the planet into the realization that there's just this perceptual difference, and that you may not be here in the physical, and boy, did we love you in the physical, but we can love you just as much in the non-physical.
He says, thank you. Thank you very much. And he is assuring us that his music will live on, not only because it's recorded and it's archived, he says, but because he's produced a little piece of what he was, and she will excel at doing what he loved to do. She's the next version. He's saying she, meaning Tony, his daughter, is 2.0.
Wow, that's so incredible. Are you, I would imagine that you would be guiding her from the other side. She was performing with you, correct? Before you passed.
Yes, he says yes. And that was the highlight of his career, he says, believe it or not, sharing the stage with my daughter. He's also wanting us to put the emphasis on child welfare. Chris is very adamant about protecting children, and one of the things that he is most proud of, he says, is his foundation with him, his wife Vicki, and him. It's the Chris and Vicki Cornell Foundation. Again, I had no clue about this. He just took me by the hand, led me there, tooth and nail. I looked through everything, and one of the things about this man is that he truly, and he's going to get embarrassed because he's got this sheepish look, he had a heart like no other. I mean, he really plugged away for the welfare of children. And he believed that every adult has the responsibility to make a child feel safe. And he said that's what it means to be an adult.
Was there a process that you went through, Chris, that initiated you into this level of responsibility? Because, you know, from a heavy metal rock star, grunge, you know, party scene point of view, not to be disparaging, it's hard to imagine that the person that you came to be, it just doesn't totally make sense. Was there a moment in your life where you went through some sort of evolution and realized this was maybe having children a part of this? I'm just so curious how you came to this maturity level.
You know, one of the quotes he gave me, and I'll share with you, is he just says, I was born this way. I was born to care. I was born to be a walking dichotomy. He says, on one hand, I'm this, and on the other hand, I'm this. And he said part of his contract was that he was very chameleon-like. Just when you thought you understood who he was, he became something else. And that was reflective, he says, in his music. Yeah. He never wanted to be pigeonholed or put into one genre. And in fact, he says, fuck the box. I will do whatever I want. There is no box. And he said, I proved that with Rusty Cage.
Yeah, I know. I actually saw you on stage, the last performance on Maui at the Maui Cultural Center, outdoors. And it was sunny and you were singing your heart out, and it was absolutely mesmerizing. Do you recall that show?
He said it's very difficult to recall very specific shows. You know, he says that his life, as he did his review, was a blur. Now he stopped. He said he took pit stops where it was relevant and where it was necessary in the times that were lessons and teachable moments. But as a whole, he said it's just impossible to recount every single second.
Well, so were there some defining moments in your life? Like, were there some times where you actually had these defining moments that a lot of us have?
Absolutely, he says. And one of the most defining moments was when his parents divorced.
Okay.
Very
say more about that.
moment. And while he says it defined him, it didn't define him in a bad way. He said he was all for the divorce because even as a young child, he knew that these two people had come together, done what they needed to do, produced these offspring, and it was time to move on. Chris is a very old soul, and he will acknowledge that he's a very old soul. So at age 10, he was like a 30-year-old.
Wow.
So he always knew the next step before it happened. He's also telling me he was very intuitive and very and empathetic. He's an empath.
Do you think that those abilities, those sensitivities made it difficult for you to be in the world?
Absolutely, he says. Absolutely. Because it's not like you just live life on autopilot when you're as empathetic as I am. He says, you don't just meet people and they don't rub off on you and they don't click with you. And you take a little piece of everybody that you meet. And he said, just imagine the magnitude of that, you know, with all the billions of interactions I had in my life. You know, he's saying one of the things that he wants known about him is he was very shy. He would call himself an introvert. Now he's saying clarify that for him. An introvert when he needed to be, but he was very much a life force, a strong life force when it came to entertaining. And he says not entertaining in the traditional way, because it's not entertaining for entertainment purposes, it's entertainment for educational purposes is what he's saying. And that's the key to his music. He didn't just write music to write music. Music, he says, was his medicine.
Well, you know, it can't hurt that you had a multi-4-octave range voice, and talk about a powerhouse of a voice. I mean, absolutely mind-blowing voice. That would just, you know, you'd feel it at the core of your being. And I wonder if, you know, being as shy as you were, being the introvert that you were, and empathetic, what was it like being in a stadium of people focusing their attention on you? What was that like?
Thank you for the compliment, he says. And he's also saying that he never really thought about it as this is me. He was he's very adamant that the voice came with the package. He did nothing to facilitate this voice, nothing to, you know, hone it or bring it on stronger. It was a natural gift. He goes, I must have signed up for it, because the voice, you couldn't buy that, he says. You couldn't.
So it didn't come with a manual. You just all of a sudden could belt out a tune.
Yes. And he's saying, you know, while he took lessons for music, he was more, he's saying, I was like, fuck that. I'm just going to figure it out, you know. And he's saying he would sit around and he's doing this with the guitar. He's got the guitar in his hand and he's saying, I would just pick and strum and I would bring in pieces from left field and I would try to put different pieces together that people thought didn't belong together. He wants to change directions for a minute.
Yes,
he wants to talk about the bands, and not in the sense of the notoriety of the bands. He wants to talk in the sense of the relationships with the bands. He's acknowledging something here that he learned in his life review.
Oh, okay. Well, we are definitely going to want to know more about the life review too. So, yeah. But take it away. Go ahead.
He's saying that as he had an aerial view of everything, the common denominator with all of the bands was his ability to have a cohesive relationship. Because one of the things, and he's very open about admitting this, one of the things about him, it was hard for him to trust and relate and not run the fuck away, he says.
Really? Okay.
From relationships, yes.
Okay.
He didn't have the firm understanding of what it took to work through a relationship. And he's attributing the breakup of his marriage, his first marriage, to that as well. So
was there a point in your life where you started to learn those skills, or were there people in your life that helped you to have deeper, more connected relationships?
He said his children, obviously, and his wife, Vicky,
Mm-hmm.
whom he loved with all of his heart and soul. I mean, when he talks about them and I feel the energy of them, I just get goosebumps all over. This man loved his family so much. And that's why he's going to take me right into this. And we're just going to share it right out there. He said, there was no way I intentionally took my life.
Okay. Okay.
What he is saying, and he doesn't understand, he lost control somewhere. He lost faculties. He lost sense. He said, if I were daddy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or I were hubby, he said, there's no way that I would have done this. It sickens me on a human level for them,
Mm-hmm.
on a soul level, whether a bus hit me or I took my life the way I did, it was time to go.
Okay. So, you know, you talk a bit about having an old soul. So I'm assuming that means that you had a ton of physical incarnations. Was there something in this current life that needed to be experienced because of all the culminating previous lives? Was there something that you're saying that it had to be, you were 52 years old, that it was time. Can you give us a little bit more information about what you mean by that?
Mm-hmm. He says the recollection that he has of past lives, there was a lot of persecution. There was a lot of, he's using air quotes, witch hunts after he's calling it his energy. And he always spent, like I see little feet, he's showing me, he just spent a lot of time in all the past lives running from stuff. And so let me just clarify something with him. So are you saying that you ran in this life, because we know you did early on, is it considered taking your life the way you did, running away? Because in a sense, you kind of ran out. And he says, very good observation.
Wow. Yes. Wow.
So he didn't end the cycle with this life of running away.
So knowing that you had this abrupt ending that was heartbreaking for your family and your fans and your friends, is there anything that you would like to just kind of say from the other side, or maybe share with them how you like to show up for them so that they can pay attention to the signs, because you're able to offer signs from the other side that you are present in their lives?
Mm-hmm. It's always going to be about the music for him. It's always going to be about the beat. It's always going to be about the origination. It's always going to be about the original. And especially he loves all of his kids very much, but he's focusing on Tony with the idea that when she hears the melody, she'll know it's daddy. So that's the special message for Tony. And he's saying, I wrote a couple of quotes down because, as I said, if this okay, Chris, I share. When I meet energies, it's literally like I hear them. We have a dialogue. And so when I was meeting Chris, I took some notes, and I just want to share Nina, there's the Nina again. I don't know what the Nina is around you, but there's an energy around you. Maybe there's a rock star called Nina. He says, I was always just Chris, and I was always trying to be all aspects of Chris in this life. Okay. And he is also, he wants to talk about early on.
Okay, sure.
So I wrote the quote with it. Early on, life was about coping, and it was about getting by. And he's also saying that he doesn't have any ill will towards anybody, even when he did his life review. But he also says he never had any real, he's using the word parenting or structure. Saying his parents got so wrapped up in their own survival, it became difficult to have this knowing of him needing to be cared for, or the others needing to be cared for. So he was always like the lone wolf.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Very much so.
Right. Well, so, and it seems like there, there are, in the research that I did, Chris, it says that you felt pretty unlimited, and then there was a really gnarly PCP trip that you took when you were 14 years old that caused a whole slew of cascading psychological issues for you. Is that accurate?
Yes, he said he believes that's where his anxiety began. And to the day he died, he was all about managing the anxiety. And that's what the Ativan was for. It was the trip, he's saying, that changed his life forever, and not in a good way. While he went somewhere on this trip, it was somewhere that was so dark and so heavy, and he never experienced it again. But he's saying it's like a movie that kept playing in his head and playing in his head. And the movie was revisited every time he would get into a darkness.
Oh, wow.
Movie play over and over. And that's why he said early on, his music was his medicine. Mm-hmm. Because, he's reminding us that he cleaned up for quite a while.
Right. So
even smoking.
What? That's awesome. And what happens to you in your life as Chris? Like when addiction would start to set in, was there a standard sort of slowly easing in, or would you just say screw it? How did it show up for you in your life?
He said it was a very slow, methodical process, because as a whole, if you were to look at my life, he says, I would have no reason to be dark or depressed. I had what everybody thought was it all. Mm-hmm. He's saying, but again, this piece of his brain that was permanently affected by this trip, mm-hmm. he said it would creep up on him very slowly. And he would at times pen it out, write it out. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, he also wants us to know, and he doesn't say this arrogantly, he's saying to me, say it the right way.
No pressure.
Yeah. He had an incredible mind. And what he means by that is he could write a song in his head, not even put it on paper, and then days later go back, tap in, and bring the song to life.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, that's like Mozart, and that would be considered genius. But also from a spiritual perspective, which is something that I'm really fascinated by, what would you say that is? Is that a part of something that shows up on the the planning before coming into the life? Is it a tapping in, a channel that's just wide open for you? What is that?
He says, are you asking about the skill set to writing music or the ability to remember it?
I guess both. Well, I mean, I guess my assumption, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, when people are channeling, that inspiration can flow. And I really believe that artists get a bad rap because they're not it's not appreciated, that process, that artists who are really creating mastery with their work, they're actually channeling. That's my theory anyway. And I'm assuming that when you're getting a download of a song, that you're channeling too.
Absolutely. He said, absolutely. That's the way it is. So he said, it's written, he says, that when you come in, you're going to have certain skill sets. You're going to, you pick and choose. This is I'm not sure what this means, but let's figure it out together. He's showing me like a big concrete slab, and it's got words. Oh, he's showing me an old-fashioned tombstone.
Okay.
Where you can't see the words on it.
Uh-huh.
They're faded out because it's so old.
Uh-huh.
But he shows me how when you put a piece of paper over it and you draw with the pencil over it, the words become very clear. He's saying the words are always there. You just have to know how to see them.
Wow.
And then they imprint you.
Wow. Was that easier for you to access when you were in a state of sobriety, or did it matter if you were, like in your active use of substances or not?
Sobriety. He
Sobriety.
said, by far, everything, and this is again, life review, he's saying,
Right.
everything in hindsight was so much more clear when I was sober.
Yeah. Yeah. So
now he wants to say, excuse me, he's interrupting. He wants to
please
say
do.
He has an addictive personality. That's what he had here on earth. It could have been chocolate. It could have been, Ativan. It could have been writing music. It could have been people. He had an addictive nature.
Yeah. Yeah. And so did he know that coming into this life as Chris Cornell?
Well, now he knows he knew it, but no, he said he didn't know it as he was making Chris Cornell in this life. Of course, he said when substance was introduced into his life, he knew there was the formal definition of addiction. Mm-hmm. But the other side of this, he wants us to know, as an addict, and he's saying, as an addict of life, he's saying, I am very addicted to helping all children and to helping create an awareness of the welfare of children. Human trafficking is also something very, very prominent in his forefront as he wants to move forward and get the message out. Helping kids who don't have anybody to help them is where he hopes that the Chris and Vicki Foundation pick up.
That's a wonderful resource. And are you watching events that are happening on Earth? Because child trafficking and human trafficking is kind of at the forefront now, and there's some disclosures that I think are coming forward. Are you paying attention to that stuff?
He said, I've always paid attention to that. Mm-hmm. And what he'll say is this, at times more intimately than I would have liked to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God, I'm sure. And you, if I'm correct, you and Chester Bennington were working and collaborating on efforts to help children through the Chris and Vicki Foundation, right?
Yeah. He says, my bro, Chester.
Hey, awesome. Feel free to bring Chester through. We're definitely got him on the short list for an interview in his own right.
Chester's actually here, and Chester's a very quiet energy with him. Chris is telling me that when we talk to Chester, Chester can tell his story. Okay. But what Chris is offering up is that Chris helped be the light for Chester. He helped shine the light for Chester. And helped, Chris is not taking credit for Chester's well-being by any sense, by any stretch of the imagination. He says he wants to clarify that people get well because they choose to get well. It doesn't have, no matter if I'm Chris Cornell or not, I just held a space for Chester to heal.
Well, and that's what good friends do. And it was pretty hard that you guys both passed just within 2 months of each other. That was rough.
Well, and he's saying that coincidental, he's saying, or spiritual contract. So either way, they were supposed to move on. And obviously, Chris came into this world before Chester. He had more time here. Just the idea that their contract was up at the same time, or roughly the same time, is no coincidence, because where they are now, they can be a much more powerful force, moving energies, shaping energies globally.
Ooh, I want to hear more about that, but we're going to press the pause button and take a break for part 2. And Chester, please feel free to stick around because I want to hear about all of that energy shifting. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. And if you're just here for part 1 for now, check out Veronica's work at veronicadrake.com. And if you want to see more about what I'm doing, it's essentialhealing101.com. All right, take care. And thanks for loving your rock stars.